I always knew the lake would take something from me someday. I just never expected it to be a whole wedding party, chairs, champagne tower, and Karen's screaming niece included. But when someone decides to hijack the dock you built with your own hands, they best be ready to float. I built that dock with my own 2 hands back in the early 80s, back when my knees didn't creak and my wife still insisted on painting every railing sunset beige. It wasn't just planks and screws. That dock saw fishing trips with my boy when he was still small enough to fit on my lap. It held quiet Sunday mornings sipping coffee with my wife, talking about everything and nothing. It was the place where I watched the lake go silver in the moonlight the night she passed. That dock was memory, muscle, and meaning. So when Karen, not a Karen, the Karen decided it was the perfect spot for her niece's surprise lakeside wedding, she didn't just trespass on wood and water. She stepped on sacred ground. Karen wasn't the screeching type. No, she was worse, smooth, polished, all Southern smile and bless your heart while she signed your name on forms you never saw. She'd taken over the HOA a year earlier after the last president retired to Florida and left the clipboard throne unguarded. Since then, she'd fined folks for lawn flamingos, shut down 3 barbecues for excessive aroma, and handed out citations like Halloween candy. Her favorite phrase? "It's for the good of the community," which was code for "it's good for me." The day it all began, I was invited to a classic car show up at the community center. I figured why not stretch the legs, see some chrome, maybe have a hot dog or 2. Left the dock quiet and undisturbed. When I rolled back up the driveway, I saw white folding chairs lined like dominoes across my dock. A white arch shimmered in the sun, draped in gauzy fabric and dripping with fake peonies. 2 teenagers were stringing up lights like they were decorating for prom, and a man in a tux was trying to tune a guitar while sweat poured off his brow. And there, right in the middle of it all, stood Karen, clipboard in hand, pearls tight around her neck, talking into a walkie-talkie like she was commanding a naval fleet. Stepped out of my truck so slow I think the birds stopped to watch. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "what in God's name are you doing on my dock?" She looked up, smiled like she just remembered I existed, and said, "Oh, Hank, we didn't think you'd mind. It's just for a few hours. You weren't using it, and this view, it's perfect for the photos. Isn't it romantic?" Romantic. Right. I looked past her to see a catering truck parked on my lawn, a champagne tower wobbling dangerously near my tackle box, and a DJ setting up directly where I usually gut trout. "You're on private property," I said, "and you didn't ask." She waved it off like a mosquito. "Don't be difficult, Hank. Think of it as a donation, a gift to the community." That's when I saw the flyer. It wasn't a permit. It was a wedding invitation. Karen thought a pretty font gave her the right to hijack my dock. I could have blown my top right then, but something in me said, "No, not yet. You want a show, Karen? Fine, I'll give you 1.c. I'd been working on the dock that winter, reinforcing the pylons and fixing some rot near the edges. And in doing so, I installed a quick-release system, just a maintenance thing, meant to let me detach a section without hauling in a barge. Didn't tell a soul. Figured it might come in handy someday. And oh, did it ever! I waited until the ceremony was halfway through. I heard the faint strains of a violin and the preacher warming up his speech. Karen was fluttering from guest to guest like a social butterfly with a clipboard for wings. I slipped into the boathouse, pulled the release lever, and waited. It started slow, subtle, just a whisper of movement. The dock creaked, a little lurch, like a drunk trying to stand up. The guests didn't notice at first, not until the flower girl pointed at the water where there used to be shore. That's when the screaming started. A ripple of panic as the dock drifted further and further from land, the entire wedding floating like a carnival ride no one wanted to be on. Karen shouted into a megaphone, demanding calm. The DJ's speaker tipped into the lake with a splash. Someone's grandmother passed out onto the shrimp cocktail table. It was magnificent. I watched from my porch, lemonade in hand, binoculars trained on the chaos. And I'll tell you what, I didn't feel guilty, not for a second. Because sometimes people like Karen need to learn that community doesn't mean control. It means respect. And she hadn't shown an ounce of it. Now, Karen wasn't one to go down quietly. Oh no, she called the sheriff. She called the HOA. She probably called the Pope, but I'd played it clean. Hadn't touched a thing after my warning. When the rescue boat finally came, she was red-faced and fuming, waving her arms like she was guiding planes on a runway. By nightfall, the live stream had hit the internet. Karen's Dock of Doom was trending. Someone set her megaphone. Speech to circus music. And by morning, every neighbor from here to the next county had seen it. You'd think that'd be the end. But Karen, she came back swinging. Called an emergency HOA meeting. Claimed I endangered lives. Said the dock was unsafe. That it had sabotage written all over it. Only problem? I had everything on tape, video, audio, timestamps. Proof she'd been warned. Proof she'd waved it off. And when the crowd heard it, well, the tide turned. One old firefighter stood up and said what we were all thinking. Karen, you've been treating this neighborhood like it's your kingdom. But we didn't elect a queen. The vote came fast. 3 to remove her, 2 abstained. Karen was out, but she didn't slink away quietly. Oh no, she came at me again. This time with a county inspector in tow, claiming environmental damage. Wanted to get me fined. Except I had all my paperwork, every permit and receipt organized better than her wedding planner's binder. The inspector shook my hand. Karen scowled. I offered her a mint. Days later, someone leaked emails plans Karen had made to sabotage my security system and sneak onto the property. That did it. The neighborhood turned so fast it made your head spin. She put her house up for sale within the week. No goodbye, no apology. Just a moving van and a sour expression. The best part? The Department of Environmental Protection fined her for lake pollution, $6,000 for the generator leak and the crushed vegetation. Turns out, when you build a floating circus without permission, the lake remembers. Karen vanished. A quiet couple moved in, started planting wildflowers and feeding ducks. The neighborhood began to breathe again. People started waving more. Kids rode bikes without fear of being told their helmets were the wrong shade of blue. And me? One rebuilt. The dock, Bigger, stronger, with solar lights and a new sign at the front. Private dock. Trespassers will be drifted. We threw a party a few weeks later, the Freedom Float. Lanterns on the lake, music, laughter. Someone made t-shirts with a cartoon Karen clinging to a runaway dock. Was it petty? Sure. Was it hilarious? Absolutely. That night, as I sat in my rocking chair, golden, best dock defense or beside me, I watched the lanterns dance across the water. Thought about how peace isn't something you're given, it's something you guard. Sometimes with patience, sometimes with paperwork, and sometimes with a quiet smile and a well-timed release lever, because the real lesson here, folks, isn't about docks or weddings or HOA rules. It's about standing your ground. It's about knowing the value of what you've built, not just in wood and nails, but in memories, in love, in legacy. And when someone tries to trample over that with heels and a megaphone, well, sometimes the lake just needs to remind them who it belongs to. Now, as for that zipline someone tried to rig from the hill to my shed, that's a story for another day. Let's just say the air horn I installed did its job. Scared the squirrels halfway to Kansas, but for now the lake is quiet. The coffee's hot, and the dock? The dock is right where it belongs.